Hey, welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm Greg Payne, and I am excited that you have chosen to join me this week. We have none other than James Lott Jr., who's joining us. James is somebody that really focuses in on what it's been like to become a young grandparent, as well as what it's like watching millennials now, if you can believe it, becoming grandparents themselves. You are going to enjoy this conversation and you're going to learn something. I had my assumptions and some of the things that I've believed about Generation X and the millennials being challenged. And so I enjoyed this conversation with James, and you are too. So be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and do all that stuff on social media. We've got links that will be into the show notes. And without further ado, let's jump into this awesome conversation with James. Welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast, James Lott Jr. I'm happy to have you back on. This has got to be like at least your fourth or fifth time on the Cool Grandpa podcast.
I love coming on. You know, you're my friend, you're my buddy, so I love coming on.
Every time we get talking, you challenge a lot of my assumptions and a lot of my notions, and which is awesome. I mean, that's how you grow, that's how you develop, that's how you learn stuff. So we've got you on here to talk to us about the younger grandparents, especially, I can't believe I'm saying millennials becoming grandparents. This is crazy. And all of a sudden, these guys, this generation, are starting to become grandparents.
Yeah, and we're not even talking the younger side of the millennials, the zennials, the Z. We're talking about the zennials with an X. Those are the ones who are in their 40s. They're literally in their mid 40s. And they are, and yeah, they had a kid at 18, 20 years old, and now that kid, 18, 20 years old, is having a kid. We're not even talking about anybody underage having kids or in high school. We're talking a grown person and a grown person creating what they call now the Gen Alphas, now Gen Betas. These are new generations. And what I'm gonna actually really challenge you about. Get ready, Greg. Get ready, because Gen Zers are only a few years away from becoming grandparents.
I don't know who should be more shocked, the Gen Z crowd that might happen to listen to this, or the Gen X, baby boomers, millennials that are hearing this.
They're parents. They're parents, and we'll get into more detail. But a lot of them are there's different things happening with each generation that came before that's dictating how young people are having kids, relationships, which results to how young they're having grandkids.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the topics that I originally reached out to you about, was really your understanding about the younger grandparents. That's kind of where you're living in that area. And I wanted to find out really kind of what is setting millennials apart from Generation X in terms of their experiences, parenting styles, and being young grandparents even.
So let me start first by those of you who don't know me. I'm James Lott Jr. I am the creator and host of I'm a grandparent. That's really with an exclamation point. I'm a grandparent podcast. It's 5 years old, and I say it's the changing face of the grandparent. That's my tagline. So every week on Saturdays, at least a new episode, guests, non-guests, topics talked all the time about grandparents. And when I say younger grandparent, we're talking under 60. We're talking as early as 28 years old. Yes, that has happened, to about 60. Now I'll give you a couple of some stats. And I was ready for this because this is what I base my stuff off of. So Gen Xers, that's me. Is that you too, Gen X?
Yes.
Okay, so we're Gen Xers. I'm 56, so I'll be 57 soon. And so there are 63.5 million wrestlers running around. Okay, and that is 53% of people between 50 and 64. Millennials, that's the 30 to 40-year-olds, there are 6.7 million grandparents, or 3.3% of 30 and 40-year-olds. So that's a nice little chunk. So it's not to sneeze at. So in total, from age 30 to 64, there's a large percentage of grandparents. that are happening. It just looks different. And keep in mind, we're watching my channel, we're watching the oldest Gen Zer is 28. I have a grandson who's 26, who was in a 5-year relationship with a woman. They didn't have kids, but their whole trend is being in relationships right out of high school. They're like, there's no stigma against it. They may have kids at 18, 19 years old. They don't care. It's happening. So just going to start out by saying there's a lot of grandparents under 65. So let's keep in mind, Gen X parents were baby boomers. A few were the greatest generation, but most of us have baby boomer parents. Millennials either had mostly baby boomer parents, a lot of people had kids later, or second sets of families. That happens. You have kids. My father has kids ages 66 to 20. So he's had several marriages. So it ranges, right? They have some of them have older Gen X parents, like the high, closer to that. They call them Generation Jones, whatever that is, but a lot of Gen X. Where Gen Zers mostly have either millennial parents, the older millennial parents, and a few of the Gen X. What's happening is Gen X, and you have to remind me of this, we were the latchkey kids, we were the play outside till dark, we were the walk it off generation. Our parents, baby boomers, were finding themselves in many ways. They had to work. Sometimes two people households. The wife couldn't stay at home anymore. Divorces happened. There are a lot of things. So for us, we're very resilient, self-reliant generation. But then we treated our kids, whether they're Gen Z or millennials, like we don't want them to have what we had. We want them to have we felt a better childhood. So I fully admit my daughters are a little spoiled. I will admit that. They're a little spoiled. Everybody got trophies. Everybody, we didn't leave them out by themselves at nighttime. They were not latchkey kids. Like we were, helicopter parents came into play. We were very involved in our children's lives for better or worse, right? Gen Zers have a whole other connection. They're not even connected to me. They're old, like Gen X and all that. They're not even in part of that because their lives are just very different. They're very tech savvy. They're about work-life balance. They're about the environment. They're kind of the product of the things that each of our generations were trying to work on, but they really are work. They see how dire it is. Many of them don't live on their own. They're not going to college because they can't afford it. It's a different life. So all that stuff, all these generations, that plays into what kind of parent they are, we're finding, and what kind of grandparent. Gen Xers, we're like kind of old school, but we're the cool grandparents. We're fun. Let's see, cool grandparent. There we go. There you go. We're fun. We're still young enough that we can still hang out with them, do things. We don't shock easily. We've been through it all, kids. We're very much, we played hard and rough. It's okay. We're gonna whatever you want to do. We're also about creativity and expressing yourself. We're all about that. But we're old school. A lot of us are old school. We're just like, we're watching our kids parent, and that's hard. Millennials are different. They're scared of everything. Everything is kind of scary to them. Everything's kind of like anxiety filled. They're very anxiety filled. They don't want their grandkids to get into anything. They're trying to hold on to certain, but they're not old school. They're not old school. They're the ones they don't believe in spankings. They don't believe in, the things that we grew up with. They don't believe in harsh tones. There's things that millennials, they're treating the grandkids a little differently. And the younger millennials, which I say the Zennials, the Z, the ones in their 30s, they're so young. So for them, a grandkid's just another family member. They love them, but it's part of the family now. Because many of the millennials and the millennials are still raising children of their own. So it gets scooped in. And then the difference between all of this is social media. That changes everything.
Yeah. And you bring up a couple of really good points that we've talked about a little bit, but maybe we don't understand really the impact of it. And where I'm going with this is as Generation X, we were growing up when CNN came into being, right? 24-hour news cycles. And we were growing up and hearing about negative stuff, child abduction in Portland, Maine. Well, if you live in Portland, Oregon, you hear about Portland, Maine, and now you're anxious about your own kid, even though things may not be that way where you live, but it feels like it is because of how immediate it is. And then you add that with the social media that came on afterwards with it. I think that just adds to a little bit of that anxiety that maybe Generation X, we didn't really grow up with it as much, creating the same level of anxiety where we just shrug it off because that was like, hey, that's across the country. I'm here. I've got my BMX bike. We're going down to the pool and we're hanging out, and that's what we're doing.
Well, for me, because I'm talking about grandparents, so when it comes to the parent part of that, parenting is much harder now than it was before. I wouldn't want to be a parent right now. So I don't even, what they're dealing with, but we're talking about grandparents, we're different. It's a step behind. So we're still carrying a lot of what we grew up with into our grandparenthood because we're just like, again, the millennial parent may be so worried about their kids and oh my god, and there's this or here, where the millennial grandparents or the Gen X grandparents is going, oh, I'll be fine. Stop babying them. They'll be okay. Let them cry. Be fine. Like we're saying, well, let them walk 2 blocks down the street. Just stand by. Like we come up with stuff that's a little more lenient, where because we got the parents. So we're just kind of going. I dropped you a couple times. Your free lived. It was fine. It was great. That kind of thing. But I think what you're saying totally goes to the millennial or parents of today when they're parents. Grandparent wise, we're like, it's a little different for us. We're like, it's fine. Give me a kid. Let's go over here. We're gonna do this. I think it's much different.
Yeah, I think our grandparenting style is that if you go to the park with four, you look around and you got three, you're kind of like, well, that fourth one's around here somewhere. I'll find him. Versus the parent who's going to be 911 code red lockdown. Where's number four? Uh,
Yes,
and I think
exactly.
that also creates a bit of a tension, right, between the grandparents and the parents.
Well, we found in many of my talks and my interviews and just my own life, um, when it comes to so millennials and baby boomers do not get along. That's a whole okay boomer thing. It's just a whole. I've seen it happen. They just do not get along, and there's a lot of disconnection. I'm seeing in my experience with a lot of baby boomer grandparents with the grandkids today. Not when I was a kid. Well, when I was a kid, I had the greatest generation grandparents. They were great. But I feel like baby boomer grandparents, they're living longer, they're looking better, they're doing stuff, but they're not as and just the things that I've seen, not as intense with the grandchildren. And there's a lot of tension with the parents. Like the if they have millennial kids, especially, it's a lot of tension. Yes. I mean, yes. Do I fight with my mother a lot of times? Sure, all the time. But it's more of a almost brother sisterly thing, like where we would come together on something for the grandkids. We may go back and forth. My daughter's a millennial. She's one of the older millennials. So she's a millennial, and now she has grown children. So now we are starting to bond together because I'm like, yeah, I know what that feels like because I went that with you and your sister. So we're starting to kind of the gaps closing in terms of parent grandparent. We're agreeing on a lot of the same things. Because we're like, yeah, that's kind of. Now I have another daughter with Gen Alpha grandkids. My they're young, so I'm waiting to see how that works out for us as we go. That's a whole new territory for us. But yeah, we know. But we noticed that when it comes to millennials and boomers, they do not get along. Millennials and Gen X, it depends. It's mixed. It's kind of mixed. Like it's mixed.
Yeah, and I wonder too. If some of that tension between the millennial and the baby boomers goes back to the baby boomers. You and I can remember the me generation, the yuppies, the everything back from the 70s and 60s and everything forward, how that generation would be typified as looking inward versus looking outward. And I'm not saying everybody, this is a hey, this is a
Realization, yeah.
big level discussion. And to your point, I think millennials look a lot more outwards with some of what their challenges have been in coming up, and what we've experienced as a Western culture.
So millennials are very emotionally present. They're socially conscious. Almost a throwback to the baby boomers. Because remember when they were coming up, they were socially conscious, mostly present. Well, drugs got in the way, but they were all about the world, and they were looking outwards at first. Remember, but then the '70s came, and it was like there was disillusionment, and other things were going on, and it was like everybody now it's time for us to fight for our spot. Women's lib, gay rights, men getting divorced and remarried, women trying to get. It was a whole different world. So kids kind of we got left in the shuffle somehow. Some of us grew up with two parents, but who knows what their parents were going through? Because as a kid, you didn't know. They didn't tell us. There was a definite gender separation of parent and child. I was told to leave the room many times. Right? And grandparents do. We're going to talk for you. You go in the other room or go outside. Millennials it's different with Gen X millennials. We talked in front of you and explained everything. We were still a little hesitant. We didn't tell everything, but we were talking stuff. But now millennials are just like, they cuss, they curse, they do it all in front of their kids. It's not, well, they're grown up, they'll be okay, they'll know the difference later, blah, blah. They understand what's going on. Like, it's a harsher world. So the millennials aren't running from that. But they're cautious and anxious, but they're open to a lot of stuff emotionally and a lot of stuff consciously. So you're right. So they're looking outward going, we inherited this. But then, again, I want to scare you guys, the Gen Zers are even more emotionally aware. So I'm really curious what they're going to do as grandparents because they're very about, like I said, work-life balance. They're not taking jobs. So for me, as a Gen Xer, telling my grandchildren, no, let's do it this way. Greatest generation telling me, you got to get education. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. Boom. Me telling my grandkids, just go to trade school. Find something so you don't have to get debt. If you want to go to college, and I have half my grandkids are in trade school, half are in college. I was like, just go where you can. Let's get these scholarships. What we got to do, but don't kill yourself trying to go to school. Millennials are saying, "F that." You guys, we don't got no money to give you. So if you want to go to school, you got to figure it out. We can't help you. So now they're like, so the kids are like, well, what do we do? So they're like kind of floundering, and there's all these jobs out there they don't want. Because there's again, we got to bring up social media. We can't leave that out. Now they want to be influencers. Now they want to be this. Now they want to be that. Now they want to be this. And it's like, I'm doing a job. We are doing something that was not invented when we were
Right.
growing up.
Right. No, it's crazy what happens with the democratization of the technology and how anybody with a few $100s can get a mic and get a website and get going. And on one hand, that's really good. On the other hand, I think it shows people that are younger a little bit of a disillusionment. It's almost like when we were growing up, how you thought everybody who just worked hard could get into the NBA. And it's like, no, you got to have a few breaks. You got to have some different things. The numbers of who makes it is really small. But the idea right now, I think, to your point, is if I can film myself doing a weird dance, I'll be a TikTok sensation, I'll have 2 million followers, and life is going to be great for me.
That's what it is. And it just seems more attainable than it did before. I wanted to go into radio growing up. And it was Columbia Broadcasting School. That was like the thing you'd have, but it was like I wanted to write a book. You had to submit and all this stuff you had to go through to get to one of the 5 publishing houses, Simon and Schuster, all those. That's done now. I publish books. I put out albums. I have shows. It's all DIY now. So that changes everything as a grandparent framework in terms of talking to their kids and grandkids. Because now you're saying, before, you gotta work really hard. You gotta go out there doing stuff. And now I'm like, well, not really. You have to. You still want to instill good. You still want to instill good values in them and a hard work ethic. But we also know the reality is it's a crapshoot also. So, as grandparents of the younger side, our challenge is how do we talk to our grandkids honestly, nobly, still encourage them also to work hard for something.
Oh, I think to your point, it's that instilling kind of a work ethic, values, the intangibles that they can take with them from experience or job to job, right? Is you have to own that, because I think one of the things too that Gen X saw was that our parents became a way to balance corporate ledgers, and we're kind of the tail end of that, where that kind of loyalty about just go find something, work hard at it, stay in there, is not there. It's the kids know that they're going to go from job to job, gig to gig. And I think the last thing I saw is the average time at a position is now something around 18 months.
It's just 2 years, yes. The thing is, the loyalty factor, I mean, it's that whole quiet quitting where people just stop working basically at their job until they leave. There's a whole thing of not giving 2 weeks' notice anymore. That like, what if I mean, I was told you had to give 2 weeks' notice, and oh my god, and you got to help them, and even though a lot of companies, there are a couple companies who said, "Bye, James, get the f out," and I was like, "Okay, I tried you, I gave you 2 weeks' notice, you didn't want it," but I still would give it because I was told that's what you do. You don't want to burn bridges. Well, now it's not considered burning bridges. This is like we don't want somebody who's a traitor in here. We don't want you to do any damage to our company. Bye, here's your shit stuff, and get out. Because, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's literally, and so it's a different. So for us Gen Xers, a lot of times, and baby boomers, it's hard for us to reconcile that still, because I'm still a hard worker. I have my own business and everything, but I'm still a hard worker, and I believe in courtesy and politeness and hi, Miss Helen, and hello, sir, and these other generations don't do that. They're just not. They just don't. But they don't see it as anything wrong. My grandkids, and I'm also watching my sisters and brothers and grandparents too now with various ages. We still teach them when you walk in the room, say hi to everybody. When you go to bed, say goodnight to everybody. Like we still, but we are the Gen X. We're the ones saying you should do that, not the millennial parents. Just the Gen X and baby boomer grandparents are saying, "Come give me a hug before you go to bed. I love you." That whole thing. Where the other young generations, they don't mind that as much. It's like all of a sudden, where are they? Oh, they fall asleep on the couch, or they're over there in bed already. That's like, but we're holding on to the old traditions that I think are not getting passed down at all.
Yeah, and I wonder too how that's going to be affecting the younger grandparents when they hit a stage where they really want that connection with the grandkids. As they get older and they move into it, are they going to miss out on having those discussions and some of the politeness and some of the things that we use for just, we think of good manners, that right now maybe those relationships and everything's very transactional just within the world? Are they going to miss that as they get into their 50s and 60s and so forth?
No, they won't miss it. They don't have it. They don't have it already, so they can't have what they don't miss. They can't miss what they don't have. So I don't think they care. I mean, all seriously, in my experience, they care. I think they view grandchildren differently nowadays. It's like it used to be a shameful thing if you were a young grandparent. Remember, when my daughter got pregnant very young, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I was hurt. I was upset. It was a mess in my family. We love my grandson now. I get to name him. The whole thing, everything changed. But the whole point was, we were talking 25 years, 26 years. It was a shameful act. Nowadays, there are people on social media and my new grandbaby, and here's my baby. They're a year apart, or I was born at the same time. They're almost celebrating, not almost, they're celebrating that they're a grandparent and they're 28, 29, 30, 31 years old. And again, like I said earlier, it's almost like it's just a part of my family. I mean, they're the grandchildren. I'm not saying there's no delineation, but it's kind of just more like, from what I'm seeing, is that, well, it's just, I mean, she got pregnant. Okay. I'm going to love that child. I'm going to love that child. I don't see anything wrong with it, but they're not doing this whole, but I'm still young. I'm still partying, which I always talk about on my shows. Some of us are still dating. We're still going. I mean, that's a whole other mindset. So I think older grandparents think of things that younger ones do not think of at all because they don't have it.
Okay.
I know, right? I'm trying to give you some stuff, aren't I?
Yeah, yeah, no, because well, and I think some of where my head goes to that is like that's one thing when you're younger, but I will be curious if I'm still around and kicking, watching what happens another 20, 30 years around, right?
Well, think about this: 20, 30 years from say there's so the 30 to 40-year-old grandparents, they'll be in their 60s. You could be around, maybe in your 80s. You could be around still, right? Because you're in your
Right.
50s, right?
55. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. So then you'll be you will be around. Hello, we'll be around. You have no wrinkles. We fine. We around. So you might be able to see it. I mean, I know you're current. I have a feeling it's not this not. But then again, I will correct myself in that there is this whole movement with the Gen Zers, and my granddaughter is one of them, who are kind of into that whole trad wife thing and are finding the old traditions. There's a group, there's a bunch of that generation that is looking at that now as something viable. They can't afford it, but they want that old school courtship, the whole thing, and they're kind of going that way. So and maybe you could be the one on the right side of history saying, yeah, as they get older, I mean, I'll totally admit it, as they get older, those people may be like the old school, nodding back to old school. I don't think they will, but that's a possibility.
When it could be a version of that, right? Where it's the, hey, we want to build in some permanency in a culture that's very disposable, and where even relationships and some of the things in culture have been more short term versus long term, if that makes any sense.
Well, you have to understand too that again, we can't forget technology. That has driven all of our grandparent stuff from beginning to now. And we're getting driverless cars. They're all over Los Angeles. There are, everyone has a cell phone. My kids have phones that they were like in high school, like late in high school. We never had there was and when they were in high school, it was just a camera and a phone. There was no internet on it, anything. Now schools are passing out special tablets. I say, look, no one writes cursive anymore. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on. No one's typing on a typewriter. So there's a lot of things that are happening where technology is advancing so far ahead, and Gen X, some millennials, Gen Zers, Gen Alpha, and now Gen Beta, they're completely they're smarter than I am. It's right there. So then it's like, well, they're growing up smart out the gates, but then emotionally, are they stunted? Right, Greg? There's a lot of where we advance so far, yet our emotionality hasn't caught up. That happens all the time. So with the iPhone 17, iPhone 18, iPhone 9, we're all into this whole thing, and they're all on YouTube and TikTok and YouTube and TikTok and YouTube and TikTok. It's like, well, no one's everybody's socially awkward. Everybody's socially because they're busy on their phones and their tablets. Minus we also had the COVID years. So there's a whole generation of Gen Xers, Gen Zers that are just all effed up. So I'm curious how that will play as they become parents, obviously, but as they become grandparents, when they look back and go, yeah, we couldn't even go to school for 2 years. I mean, I'm wondering how that will play for them when it comes to the future generations.
I think it's going to be interesting, and it'll probably keep all the social scientists in business for a long time.
So remember, we're the last generation, probably Gen X, has their own houses. Many millennials live at home. They're moved back home. Many Gen Zers have never left. So it's like many of them are living at home and they're helping their parents or they're a lot of us Gen X. I have an aging mother that I'm taking care of, but she lives in her own house 4 miles away. She's not far away. She's not an invalid, but we have to look out for her. But most millennial situations, so the grandparents are in the house. There are two, three, four generations in one house or on one compound or however that works here in LA, especially. Because we have duplexes and triplexes and back houses, and now they call them ADUs. They're apartments on top of garages. I mean, so we're packing them in. On my block alone, 5 to 7 cars per house. It's crazy. You can't park anywhere over here. So I was saying that's changing things too, because now you have the grandparents. You may have great grandparents all in the same house. How's that going to affect everybody going forward and later into life?
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because I think there's somewhere around a few million grandparents that are raising grandchildren. And that doesn't even include, to your point, the ones that are just three generation households where
Aren't you
mom
raising a
and dad
grandchild?
are raised. Pardon?
Aren't you raising a grandchild?
No,
No,
no.
okay. I was,
I've done a few shows
me too.
about
Yeah, me too.
that, but
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of somebody.
yeah, no, it's one I'm keeping kind of tabs on, because now as I'm starting to work in the school system out here, I'm seeing a lot, especially with the special needs kids, that a lot of times it's the grandparents that are taking over that role for, you know, the primary reasons is drugs, detention, and desertion tends to be it. And then when you throw a kid with special needs on top of that, that creates even more stress for the parents that might be trying to work their way through those other items. So I've got, I'm seeing that a little bit on the front lines there.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I've seen it too. I've done shows on that too.
Yeah, I do want to touch on. Have you noticed, or do you have a good feel for even maybe what some of the differences are between the young grandfathers and the young grandmothers? Like, what are young grandmothers maybe experiencing that maybe grandfathers aren't?
Well, it's there's no delineation. It's the classic story of most of the grandmothers jump in, and like I said, if they're not raising a child, grandchild, they're heavily involved with school pickups. And I'll watch them after this day, and we'll do it. You can drop them off when you want to. And grandfathers, we're kind of like, especially if you're younger, we're working. We're still out there trying to make ends meet. We're trying to work and stuff. So it's just not laid on us to be active grandparents so heavily. Where the grandmother is helping. A lot of times, if it's a daughter, then a mother and daughter, or even if it's a daughter-in-law, it's just very much. There's a lot more of that where fathers and sons don't really get on each other about being grandparents and parents. You just don't. You just don't. Unless a problem arises, and then we jump in. Usually, it's like, I got to talk to you for a second, But most of the time, it's like everybody's working. The guys are working. Everybody's working. We try to get in there. I'm trying to show one of the things that I'm doing is trying to show that there are active grandparents. You already know this already. And I've been grandfathers, and I've been really pushing the grandfather narrative the last 5 years, even more so than grandparents, because there are good fathers out there, and I was one of them, and there are good grandfathers out there. And there are some grandparents that grandfathers I've had on my shows, and I know in real life, who are very active in their grandchildren's lives. It's everything's the grandmother. And yes, we love our women and we love the mothers and all that. I have nothing against that at all. But I feel like we need more. The narrative is always just that it's about the grandmother. When you mention a grandparent, you automatically go to that. Um, so I can say in my experience from what I'm watching, and I'd be curious if any young grandmothers would, 'cause I haven't heard anything. It's just more like they naturally get involved. It's a maternal thing. They actually want to get involved and be in. But I've talked to many grandfathers who are very committed to their grandchildren, especially their grandsons. They're like, if they didn't have, like, I didn't have sons, I have grandsons. I was extra committed in it. I got a chance. I had a chance to, and a lot of other young grandfathers that I've met have told me it was their second chance. Either they were so young when they had their kids, they just couldn't be there for their own kids. So it's their do over, so to speak. That's all you always get God, that wasn't the father I had growing up. Like, he's better to you than me. And you hear it all the time, right? You hear it all the time. That's any generation. So for me, I haven't seen a delineation by age. It's just mostly by the gender part. It's just that it's grandmothers usually just jump in and they're ready to get in there and do that. It's just a natural role. But there are some really great grandfathers that are great are jumping in. Like myself, my grandkids will tell you I was very involved with my grandkids, and being younger helped because I could still play with them and jump with them and run around and come to all the things. But I did have to work, and there were times I had to miss certain events. That if you're an older grandparent, you're retired, you don't have to. Plus, for many of us, we're not married. There are a lot of us who are divorced or baby mothers, baby daddies. And it's a whole different kind of, you already have the co-parenting thing. Now you're having the co-grandparenting thing. That's a whole other story. So a lot of us, the roles just so it's more like, when can I see them? When can I? It's not even so much we're working together as if you're an old married couple who have grandkids.
Sure, sure. Well, and I would invite, if we've got any grandmothers, that young grandmothers that listen to this, in the comments, let us know what's going on that we don't necessarily know about, so we can talk about it, because you and I both do focus on grandfathers, because I think we feel like there's a whole lot of really active and intentional grandfathers. But a lot of times when you hear grandparenting, it really boils down to grandmother. And so we're both out here waving the flag, going, "Wait a second, there's a lot of good guys out here too."
There is, and please answer underneath this wherever you find this, because and you want to go on the show, come on the show, talk about it. I just or my show, whoever. I'm just like, my thing is, I'm not a woman, so I don't know exactly all the ins and outs. I'm just talking about from what the people I've interviewed to what I see. But I just know that there are a lot of resources, there are a lot of articles, there are a lot of stuff out there for grandmothers that supports grandmotherhood. There are a lot of stories about grandmothers, and on my show recently, I've had people who wrote books about grandfathers. So I'm always like, come on my show, let's do this, because it's important to show positive portrayals. Just like fathers, we have some great fathers out there, and I didn't have a great father, but I was a great father. So and my sons-in-laws are good fathers too. So it's kind of like I want to focus on that kind of stuff. But yeah, anybody out there, go to him, tell him what you think about being, if you do find a difference about being a young grandmother. I mean, young grandmother. Now, I'm not talking the ones who are business. I'm like the ones who are, again, 50 and under. Talk
Right.
to him. Tell him what you think.
Yeah, let us know, because well, and because sometimes too, we can only see the external, right? We don't necessarily know what either grandmothers or grandfathers are feeling from that internal pressure or social media, whatever they're feeling, right? So I would love to hear from some young grandmothers about what's going on. I do want to pivot over though and get your ideas about, what do we think young grandparents and grandfathers in particular, how have some of the events over the last 25, 30 years, such as 9/11, the 20-year war on terror, and the financial crises, because what we talked about was growing up knowing the gas lines and the gas shortages in the 70s, the recessions and the stagflation going into the 80s, the big boom in the 80s, uh, corporation downsizing, right sizing, whatever it is. And those things affected us going forward, as well as affecting us as grandparents. So I'd like your idea on what maybe young grandparents are feeling, or what their experiences with that is.
So for them, many of the young grandparents, when I was born, you and I were born in the late, and well, I was born in '69. So we're talking kids born in the '70s, in the '80s, and in the '90s. So don't forget, these millennials are in the '90s, and they're grandparents. So so each decade holds its own stuff, right? You just named a bunch of stuff that I mean, I would add arcades, playing video games when they first came out, skateboarding. But there's a bunch of things that I did that was very '80s. MTV, which is going out of business or something. Like something going on with MTV right now. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. I remember just when you said this, just what sticks out to me. Here in Los Angeles, a famous radio station called K Earth 101. It's been there for a million years, and it was classic radio. About 10 years ago, they said we're adding the '80s, and I could tell. And Greg Payne, I s you not. Every person from my generation in Los Angeles went. You could hear it in Los Angeles, like a collective gasp. And we're like, because that was 40 years ago. 1980 was 45. Like, it didn't hit us until they said that and started adding '80s music. We're like, oh my God, that is classic. Because classic rock is '60s and '70s.
Yeah.
No, it's also '80s.
Yep. Or
right?
I'd even say even like 50s, you know.
Right. But 80s too. They're talking like Def Leppard. They're talking Quiet Riot. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's REO Speedwagon, Journey. I'm like, oh my god, they are. Oh my, they're all of them. So it's that to me. I relate that to the grandparent experience of people going, okay, the millennials, for example, the ones I talk to, 9/11 was a big thing for all of us. It's a before and after for everybody. They were kids though when it happened. Many of them. So their whole thing was we didn't go to school. We didn't understand what was going on. Where you and I were adults. And there was a whole. I actually I worked at Morgan Stanley. We lost the whole office in the World Trade Center. So it's a whole different story than a kid who had to stay out of school and heard about it. The '90s became, they got the CD, they got the DVD, they have so much technology that just happened for them. Um, and then going into the 2000s, adults, it's a whole different experience for them. I don't know if they wonder. I don't know if they think about the war and all that kind of stuff. But I know for like 9/11, and go back. I always go back to technology. I know it sounds like I'm a broken record, but it's technology. Really, for me, it was the Walkman. For them, it was the Discman. Later on, it was later on it was Napster. Later on, it was like and the iPod. It's like became each generation is something different. So that affects you. I go to record stores on the weekends. Actual record stores, folks. I'm all about physical media. When I go in there, there's some of us old guys in there running around like remember back on the old days? But it's mostly the millennials and Gen Zers who are buying records, who are talking to the old heads there and like, oh my god, I heard this song about. I This one girl who's total Gen Zer said her dad, who was a Gen Xer, loved this group called Chic. They were really big in the '70s. Yes, they had Freak Out, Big Freaks. But anyway, she said it was a specific song that she had heard her father had passed. This is a really fun. This is really kind of sad but fun story. And she goes, I can't find that song because it's not on Spotify. It's not on Pandora. So I went to a record store and bought her the record and gave it to her, and she cried. She couldn't believe it. It's online. It's on YouTube. You can see it. But she cried. She was like, "Oh my god, it reminds me of my dad." And record players are cheap now. They buy them. They have them everywhere. Urban Outfitter, Walmart, whatever. And so she can now play it. There's almost a return. They are because they didn't have that growing up. The Gen Zers and younger millennials, they're almost coming back to it again. So that informs your grandparenting style. I now have grandnieces and nephews because their parents are buying them records. Because newer artists are putting out actual vinyl. Taylor Swift, they all do it. And the K-pop, so they're all doing it. So now I'm smiling because I'm seeing the three generations after me. There's 3 generations after me. They're buying records now, and they're listening to their headphones. And I said, okay, so I feel like Gen X was very influenced by their baby boomer parents. Whatever music they played, you played also for a while. Then you found your own way, right? Older siblings, you had them. My sisters were into Sean Cassidy and all that. Leaf Garrett and all that stuff. I remember those albums, the tight pants on the things. I remember all that stuff. And then at some point, I came into my own. That was all about Prince. So that became so. But I think with millennials, there's a little bit of that too. Whatever Gen Xers play, the babies play, they kind of like that. They have their own world. But the Gen Zers have a whole different. There are a lot of things that were not passed down. They're discovering stuff. So that's something to do with the grandkids. They may say, "This is group that I like," or they may listen to what the grandkids are listening to and go, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Who's that?" And I'm seeing a lot of multi-generational people go to concerts. I can tell you this one. I can tell you this one little quick story because I went and saw Linkin Park before Chester Bennington died. It was Linkin Park, 30 Seconds to Mars, and AFI. It was their last concert in Sacramento. It was the last concert of the tour. And it was me, my daughter, and my oldest grandson. And there was one point where the song Numb came on. And the three of us were singing it. I looked over, and I got tears in my eyes. I was a sappy man. I was just like, oh my God, I love my life. It was crazy. But I was like, 3 generations, we're all singing the same song. That's amazing. That didn't happen before. That never happened. That was not baby boomer Gen. That never happened before. It's happening now. Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z are all liking the same artist. It's more common. So now grandparents who are younger, we have more things in common. We're more open to hearing, like, I'm like, who's this Bad Bunny? Who's this, who's this Kali Uchi? Who's this? And the grandkids are happy to tell you. They're like, oh, this is so and so. Oh, like Kendrick Lamar, who's that person? Like, I don't know these people. Who's Doja Cat or whatever, or Dua Lipa? I'm like, I have no idea who these people are, Cardi B or whatever. And they're like telling me happily, which creates memories. Where our baby boomer parents and grandparents and greatest generation, they didn't care about that stuff. They didn't care. What we're listening to was just drunken noise to them. They didn't. Anyway, they're like, "Who's this Boy George person? He's weird." They didn't care, right?
Yeah, if
But
it's not
our
the
generation,
Beatles or the Beach Boys, I don't want to hear it.
exactly. Maybe some Rolling Stones was in there,
Right.
but even they were a little too much too, right? They were a little too, a little too much. The Beach Boys are from Inglewood, mind you, where I live. They're from Inglewood, actually, and Hawthorne. But anyway, but it's just like, but you know what I mean? Because you're smiling, because I'm like, because I have related to my grandkids more because I'm open to hearing. Because I think it's fun to hear what they're talking about, and like, did you hear the new song by so? I'm like, who's that? And they'll tell me, like, okay, I know who Taylor Swift is, folks. I know who that is. But my granddaughter, they love her. So I can actually relate to my granddaughter because I've heard a few of her songs. Like, they're pretty good. And I can talk to her about it. Or Katy Perry or Billie Eilish. There's some artists I do actually kind of like them. And I'm able to relate to my grandchildren. That's something that's newer. That's a newer thing with the younger grandparent, that we're still going to the clubs also, some of us. We're still going to concerts. We're
Right.
still going to shows.
Yep.
And now we're going to them with our grandchildren. Sorry, thank you.
No, and that's a great point. Is I think some of it is being part of that discovery that the kids have is creating those bonds, right? And both of us, we talk about that. Is like that's how you create those memories, those bonds that when kids get to be teenagers and grandkids don't think grandpa's as cool as they are, that bond is still kind of there. And then at a certain point it's like, hey, remember when you introduced me to this? Well, check this out. I've got the whole record. I've got the whole CD collection now, or whatever it is. It just brings it back.
And here's the thing, kids. You're not going to be cool for a while. It happens. Just like parents, we know that. But I think at parents, we always realize that. Like, parents are like, we know at some point they're going to hate us and all that kind of stuff. They always come around. And with grandparents, too, I'm learning, because they're newly adults. So our relationships are they love me. I know they love me, and that's not even a question. But our relationships are shifting a little bit. I don't get the phone calls as much as I used to. I have to call them sometimes. And they'll answer the phone, they'll talk to me, but it's not, but I just know that they're going through they're feeling they're becoming adults. And we have to give them the grace to do that, but still be around. Like, I'm not gonna be like, I'm just gonna go away. But they will come back. Because my older one, we've gotten a lot like it's a cyclical thing. My daughters and I fought. There were a couple of years, it was rough when they first got to college and everything. And they were having a good time in college. But once they became parents and got older, it came back around. It literally did. It came back around. So I just want all grandparents of all ages, whether you're young or old, just know there might be some times where you're not as cool and they won't be around you as much as they used to. They may not talk to you as much as they used to. But don't go away completely. Just kind of like, let them have their moments and be around. Because they'll come back around. Because like you said, they'll come back around. Come back around. If you were good to them, they'll come back around. They'll come back around.
Absolutely. And James, I've had you on for a little bit. Is there anything we could have like a part 2, part 3 with all this conversation, but is there anything about the millennial grandparent, the younger grandparent, that you want to bring up that maybe I haven't asked you?
Just know that the millennial grandparent and the soon-to-be Gen Z grandparent, I'm still scaring you guys, parents and grandparents, I would say both parents and grandparents, they're much more in tune to the world than we were. They're actively in tune to the world, and they're looking out for themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. They want a better world for their grandchildren. They're not censoring themselves in front of their grandchildren. They're not keeping things from their grandchildren, the ones that I'm seeing and hearing and talking to. it's almost like it's the village. It takes a village to raise people. The village talking. The village is talking. There's no delineation. In most cases, they're in the same house, or again, I say the same compound. They're all together. So the lines are blurring with these younger generations, and with millennials, because again, they're worried, they're anxious, they're going through stuff. Like I said, many of them can't have a relationship, they're trying to get a relationship, or like, they lose jobs. AI is here, losing jobs. My son-in-law just lost his job. So it's like, they're worried, but they're openly worried. Like they're like that they're worried, and that they keep, So it's the millennial grandparent and the soon-to-be Gen Z grandparents are very much, they're in tune with work-life balance, health and wellness. Many of them are really into working out and walking and running and lots of water and all that, and they're all very tech savvy. They're tech savvy, and they're very much, everyone's on TikTok. That's why it's kind of my thing. I mean, my grandkids are on TikTok. My mother's on TikTok. I'm a TikTok star. But they're all on there. And so I notice, I don't censor myself because I do what I do on my shows. But I have had a couple times where, yeah, Papa Jamie, you heard what you said on that one video. I was like, oh, I might want to say, I'm like, tell your mother to be watching TikTok. No, but I mean, it's just kind of, but it's, the lines are blurring. I'm just seeing, and I don't know yet if that's good or bad. We kind of won't know until these generations grow up to become parents and grandparents. And like you said, another 20, 30 years. Or in some cases, like 10, 15 years. But 20, 30 years, we won't know how it turns out. That's the whole beauty, Greg, about being a parent or a grandparent. You won't know how bad or good you did until at least 20 years from now. That's how it works. From birth to about 18, 19 years old. Then you find out they need therapy or not. It was your fault. I say
Well,
that
I always joked with my kids that I wanted to mess them up in new and unique ways so that they wouldn't bore their therapist.
But see, I was an old school smart ass parent. I was, and my kids know me, and I still am. And they're kind of smart ass too. And I was like, where'd you get that from? And so it's funny. I mean, there's a lot of laughter. And my whole thing for all grandparents of any age, you gotta laugh, and you have to make sure you laugh with your grandchildren and laugh with your children. It's a crapshoot, folks. Parenting is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. And you may get it right, you may not get it right. Who cares? It's just like, as long as there's a lot of love in there and a lot of laughter and showing up, those are the three things I think are the ingredients of having successful relationships with the kids.
Absolutely. And again, more wisdom from Papa Jamie over here. And James, where can people find you? Where can they subscribe to Really, I'm a Grandparent?
Blockbuster Video. Just kidding. I wish there was Blockbuster. I wish there was video stores. Tower Records. You got me think about all these places now that I used to go to. Sam Goody. No, okay. Where you can find, remember, you know Sam Goody. You know Sam Goody. Okay. Where you can find me, where all James Lott Juniors are sold, at James Lott Jr. on all, I've been saying this for 20 years, so all social media platforms, literally James Lott Jr. everywhere. Really, I'm a Grandparent is on all audio streaming platform services, from iHeartRadio to Spotify, not Google, so they're gone, Apple, Audible, it's on there. It's just called, it's really, but you have to put an exclamation point. It's really, I'm a Grandparent. And then also on the granddaddy of them all, I always say, YouTube, JLJ Media. And just know, too, that I've been contributing to caringgrands.com, their blogs. I've been writing about my unique situations as a young grandparent. So I want to give a shout out to the Taft family and all of them for letting me do this. They're so great to me. And I'm in several books, which I thought I had right in front of me. Oh, I do. I'm in a book with Ted Page called Good Grandpa. Like I said, look at that handsome man right there. It's me right there. And I talk about me being a grandfather and my famous grandfathers.
Yes. And, Neil Taft's a good friend of ours, and Ted Page's as well. So definitely check out Ted's book. I'll put links to that in here, as well as Neil's Caring Grandparent. Put that in there because he's been generous with his platform. He's allowed me although we primarily do podcasts and videos, to actually write and put some stuff out there and share thoughts that we have on
Yes,
his
very
case.
generous, very generous. So I love it.
So, James, this has been awesome. I love doing these. I love catching up and getting your input. You always look at things very uniquely. And so I appreciate your time this evening, and I hope you have a good rest of the night.
It's always a pleasure being with you, folks. Greg Payne is the best. He's the best. So he's a good human. We like him. Thank you for having me on the show.
I am happy that you had the opportunity to listen to Papa Jamie talk to us about the experience of being a young grandparent and the experiences and maybe some of the attitudes of the millennials that are starting to become grandparents. I know I had some of my assumptions challenged. I feel like I'm better educated now to support those younger grandparents that James is really focused on telling their stories and sharing their experiences with the larger community. Now, I want you to remember, go over to cool-grandpa.us, check out the bookstore. You can support the program by donating a few dollars to the Buy Me a Coffee program that's over there, where for $5 and up, you can help offset some of the costs of the podcast. The other thing too is I've got t-shirts like the one, or polo shirts like the one I've got on. I've got ball caps, glasses, some other merchandise out there that can help show your support for the cool grandpa in your life. Or if you just want to make sure that people know how cool you are, be sure to check out what I've got over there, because I'm sure I've got something for you. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. Please go over, check out JLJ Media, and look at all the different shows that James is doing with his media group. You are going to be surprised how active Papa Jamie is. So, hey, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I did, as you well know. And until next week, I want you to remember to stay cool.